The United States Environmental Protection Agency has named stormwater as the #1 threat to our waterways. This threat is caused by the development and population of the natural landscape and by the building of structures with impervious materials. When precipitation falls from the sky and lands on impervious areas, stormwater runoff flows off these surfaces rather than soaking into the soil. This stormwater runoff is then discharged into our waterways, transporting all of the pollutants that it encountered along its pathway.
Essentially, every time you see a rainstorm and you look down at the edge of the road and you watch that water flowing by, it's going someplace. That stormwater has a direct effect on the health of the environmental community it reaches.
To truly understand how stormwater impacts the world around us, one must also understand the hydrologic cycle. The hydrologic cycle starts with precipitation falling from the clouds in all seasons, including rain, hail, sleet, or snow. Once the precipitation hits the ground, it is considered stormwater. Stormwater either infiltrates through soils or runs off impervious surfaces, creating stormwater runoff. Stormwater that naturally infiltrates into the soil is either used by plants or stored in deep underground aquifers. Stormwater runoff flows over a watershed, an area of land that directs stormwater downhill into receiving water bodies. Along the way, stormwater runoff picks up pollutants like fertilizers, pesticides, petrochemicals, heavy metals, and bacteria from animal waste. This dirty runoff carries these pollutants into water bodies via a municipal separate storm sewer system. Then, powered by the heat of the sun, the water in these receiving water bodies evaporates back into the atmosphere. While evaporation recharges the hydrologic cycle, it also leaves behind all of the pollutants carried by stormwater runoff, resulting in algae blooms, fish kills, beach closures due to bacterial contamination, and serious flooding due to the blockage of storm drains.
Here in Mattituck, we're in an MS4 community, and an MS4 community has a drainage system that basically is not treated before it gets into surface waters, which means water coming off our homes and our roads and our driveways is going through some conduit or over the road, going directly into our surface waters, into our bays and into our harbors. Unlike a city or an urban area that may have treatment systems for that runoff, we don't. So whatever is in that stormwater is going to find its way into the surface waters, and those surface waters are home to fish and clams and many of the things that our economy depends upon, as well as the recreation and tourism that supports our region.
Stormwater runoff is that volume of water that does not infiltrate into the ground through permeable porous surfaces like grass and bare soil. Runoff typically can be generated from roofs and pavement surfaces, anything that's impermeable. The water that falls on these impervious surfaces has to go someplace. It goes into an underground drainage system, which then goes to either a stormwater basin in one case, or to a waterway, and eventually to an estuary. Is this a good thing? No, it's not, because all of the contaminants that are incorporated in this stormwater runoff have a negative impact on those waterways.
Well, we live in a world that relies on pavement. We need hard surfaces to drive our cars on and to build roads and highways. But the thing about hard surface is that water doesn't have any way to go through it. So what happens is when water gets onto that surface, it travels very quickly, and wherever it's ending up could be the subject of pollution down the line. So stormwater infrastructure is intended to try to create a natural system where water goes into the ground before it goes out to surface waters. Green infrastructure is one way of managing that water. And again, it's a way of working with nature to find a way to redirect water off of hard surfaces into softer, more porous surfaces and bring stormwater into the ground so it has time to be diluted and treated before it gets out to surface water.
In the winter in the Northeast, people need to be safe on the roads, on our sidewalks, on our front doorsteps. And so we use a lot of salt or salt-like products in the Northeast to help melt ice so that we don't break our necks and we don't have accidents in our cars. Well, those products accumulate so that at the end of the winter, when the snow melts, it carries with it those kinds of products, those salt or salt-like products. So management of salt is a very big deal, and it has to be managed correctly. And so we have systems for storing salt, which keeps it away from water bodies. We have systems of application of salt, which will regulate the amount of salt that goes onto our streets and our sidewalks. There's a balance there to be made. Too much of one thing is not too good. So communities are really working very hard to make sure that they get the right balance of whatever products that they are using.
Stormwater is our #1 pollutant to our lakes and streams. And so that's the main focus of what we're trying to solve. In upstate New York, in the rural areas, those pollutants are going to probably lean more towards nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. 1 pound of phosphorus that gets to our lakes makes 500 pounds of algae. In urban areas, pollutants are going to be more of the heavy metals, the petroleum products, and the things like garbage and litter.
Physical debris and trash and litter, they are a problem. They tend to clog our catch basins, which are the drains on the street corners you see. And a lot of times they do get blown into our waterways directly by the wind. So what we call floatables, that's the litter off the street, candy wrappers, and whatever is discarded on the street, that is a huge concern of ours as well.
Stormwater is our enemy. Stormwater is why we're in business. Unfortunately, 80 to 85% of the garbage we pick up out the bay comes from stormwater. Everything that goes down a storm drain is going to eventually end up in the bay, on the South Shore, or the Sound on the North Shore. Every time it rains, I cringe. We average about 150,000 pounds a year picking up, trash, and that's when you think about that in terms of how much does a plastic bottle weigh, does a beer bottle weigh? All these things, they're not heavy objects, and we do pick up. We find tires and we find chunks of wood and big pieces of styrofoam, but a lot of our trash is really small. So to pick up that much trash out here with our 6 boats, that's a lot. The year after Sandy, we picked up 243,000 pounds of garbage. And last year, the first year after that, we picked up about 190-something thousand pounds of garbage. So we're hoping to see less and less of that as the years go by. The environmental impact to having all this debris end up on our salt marshes and bays out here is, 1, it'll kill wildlife. We've seen that before. And 2, it'll kill the salt marshes too. We find plastic all over the salt marshes, and the plastic lays on the grass. It burns the grass, and even though we take the plastic off, sometimes the grass doesn't come back. So it's not only killing wildlife, it's killing our precious salt marshes.
Congress adopted many of the great, far-reaching laws that we have today. Of course, I'm referring to the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the National Environmental Policy Act, and many other laws. And in Congress's grand scheme, EPA would be partners with states and localities to address these pollution problems. For example, the Clean Water Act. EPA will provide funds, technical assistance, guidance to the states that adopt the Clean Water Act permitting program and other programs. So the states are on the ground carrying out these programs. New York State, with all of its diversity, we still suffer from the effects of stormwater wherever we go in the state. You've got rural areas that are impacted by storms in a very big way, and you have our major cities impacted by storms in a very big way. So no matter where you travel in New York State, it can be a problem.
Nassau County has been on the forefront of stormwater management since the 1930s. We've installed a number of green infrastructure components at 2 industrial type facilities in Nassau County, at both the Cedar Creek Water Pollution Control Facility in Wantagh and the Bay Park Sewage Treatment Facility in East Rockaway, where we installed almost like a laundry list of green infrastructure technologies as a way to show other municipalities who have these facilities, as a way to show them these components, how they work and how effective they are.
Operation Splash is a grassroots, all-volunteer organization dedicated to cleaning up all the debris out of the South Shore Estuary Reserve in Nassau and now into western Suffolk County. Splash's education program, we try to explain what a watershed is to young kids. And we tell them basically, if you were to take a pile of dirt and take a cup of water and pour it on top of that pile of dirt, all the water would run down to the side and out to the bottom. And the bottom of the pile of dirt is the bays, or the sound. So any garbage that's on that mountain or in that watershed area is going to come out into the bays or to the sound. And the kids pick it up like that.
By itself, rainwater is pure and wonderful, but when it picks up our garbage, it's a problem. There are so many people, so many organizations around New York State that are dealing with these issues. It's really hard to name them all. We have the soil and water conservation districts. We have intermunicipal protection committees. For example, the Hempstead Harbor, Manhasset Bay, and Oyster Bay Cold Spring Harbor committees, and the Peconic Intermunicipal Consortium here on Long Island. There are also joint efforts in upstate New York. The DEC has entire programs directed at this, as does the EPA. The Audubon Society, Friends of the Bay here on Long Island. Schools are doing a lot. And also, let's not forget the business community. There are a number of businesses now that are looking at practices, ways that they can provide our communities with practices that can help us deal with this kind of pollution.
Water Wash here in Mattituck is basically a redesigned public boat ramp which was created to keep stormwater from running directly down the boat ramp into surface water and to give it time to slow down and infiltrate into the ground before it ever reaches Mattituck Creek. The stormwater runs off the road. Essentially, what used to be a dirt drive area has gravel. That gravel driveway slows stormwater down and allows some pollutants to drop out at that level. The stormwater that passes the gravel gets to the porous paving area, and that porous paving area allows more of the stormwater to filter down into the ground. And by filtering down into the ground, the pollutants are kept out of the surface water. And in the event of a very large rainstorm, any water that gets over the filter pavement goes into a natural drainage swale, and that swale retains remaining stormwater, giving it a longer period of time to soak into the ground before it reaches Mattituck Creek. The kind of porous pavement that we use here is a blend of recycled glass materials and a polymer that actually has natural plant materials in it. And it creates essentially a honeycomb, if you will, if you looked at it sort of microscopically. And that honeycomb, those spaces in between the particles of polymer and the particles of the recycled glass, create strength so you can stand on top of it, but porosity so the water can flow through it.
This is the only place on Mattituck Inlet where you can actually see the water. And so it was a good place to demonstrate how the water could enter the inlet in a much more gradated way and not be a sluice way from the stormwater runoff off Route 48. Projects that the community is involved in always are places that are much more cared about. And from a long-term perspective, you want people to care about the place as well as understand the project and what the concepts are that are being used there, because the more they understand it, the more they care about it, the more impact it will have.
So sustainability is about utilizing resources wisely now so that they're available for future generations to use. In developing green infrastructure around stormwater, what we're trying to do is to preserve water quality into the future for New Yorkers. So this is an example of green infrastructure. And green infrastructure is defined as using our plants, soils, and natural environment to try to mitigate the impacts of the development that we see behind us. Here, this is a new LEED certified building that was built on the Hofstra University campus on Long Island. And in doing so, the designers built this low area to collect stormwater running off of that parking lot and storing it here. By putting the water here, we're preventing the pollution and excess water from entering the surface water bodies that surround Long Island.
Porous pavement is one type of green infrastructure, and porous pavement essentially is a hard surface that has the ability to absorb water. When you put water on top of a porous pavement, you still have the hard structure of pavement, but the water goes down through it as opposed to sliding over it. And by retaining that water going down as opposed to over the top, you can hold pollutants back, you can hold sediments back, and you can provide for better water quality protection at the end of the line.
Rain garden is a shallow bowl that we direct water to on purpose. Rain gardens mimic nature, so what we try to do is we have a spot for water to be collected, and then we let that water soak back into the groundwater. If the water soaks in a day or less, it's a rain garden. If the water sits there longer than a day, it's not a rain garden. It's a swamp, a bog, or something else. So then we plant that rain garden with deep-rooted plants. The plants take up that water, soak up that water, use that water, and clean that water almost drinkable standards within 2 to 3 feet underneath that soil. Most people think that a rain garden is a wet spot, so you want wet plants. It's actually the opposite. You actually want dry plants that can handle some water, not wet plants that can handle drought. The rain garden is only wet when it rains, so it's only wet a small percentage of the time. You want more dry plants that can handle water. Hydrangeas do make a good rain garden plant, as well as black-eyed Susans and purple coneflowers, number of trees and shrubs. You can put rain gardens in shade, so that hydrangea for the shade, but also hostas and ferns and things like that work well in the shade. So you can go in either direction. Where you place a rain garden is where is the water flow across your property. The downspout off your house, the sump pump outlet, off the edge of the driveway where the water flows across the grass. Those are all good opportunities to capture that water. So this is a rain garden with the town of Oyster Bay. It's newly planted, so the plants are still growing. There's still some room to grow. How this rain garden works is that we're taking water off of the roadway here, and it falls into this basin where I'm sitting. When the garden starts to fill up with water, the water will soak into the ground and get clean and cool and go to the sound, which is further in the distance. When we get too much rain, when we have too much water in a big storm event, the water goes over the dam and then down the drain and over my right shoulder here.
Green infrastructure works. It helps to reduce pollutants. A series of rain gardens can revitalize communities. People take pride in community gardens. Another example would be a green roof.
Right now we're standing in the Brooklyn Navy Yard on the roof of Building 3, which we've converted into a farm. And it's an intensive green roof, which means it has deep soil. We're actually using it as a vegetable farm, so it's unlike most green roofs that you'll see out there. Arugula and other lettuces are kind of our cash crop, I would say. Got some nice sweet and hot peppers here. Everybody loves our hot sauce. We have 2 farms. We have one in Queens and one in Brooklyn, and between the 2 farms we produce about 50,000 pounds of vegetables per year. So every year the 2 farms are really holding back about 1 million or so gallons of water from entering the sewer system. Our green roofs here at Brooklyn Grange are unique because they're intensive green roofs that have been used to grow vegetables. And they're not just ecological facilities, but they're actually businesses where we have economic activity going on. We grow a wide variety of vegetables and herbs. Pretty much everything you can imagine seeing at a farmer's market farm stand, we grow it. So cucumbers are great plants because, like all of the fruiting plants, they have flowers and they feed our pollinators. And over here you can see our beehives, which are making honey for us, while the cucumber plants are making cucumbers, and they have this kind of wonderful symbiotic relationship. A single beehive can produce about 100 pounds of honey in 1 year. So we really love them. They're good for our plants, and they're good for our pocketbooks. Here's some nice basil. It's pesto season. In essence, a green roof just acts like a big sponge. When it rains, the green roof absorbs the storm water, and then the storm water either will slowly trickle down into the drain, or it'll be evaporated up back into the air or absorbed up by the plants. Some of the biggest ecological benefits to green roofs are stormwater capture, heat island effect reduction, so it actually cools the air. We've seen that this roof is about 10 to 20 degrees cooler on a hot day than similar roofs in the area. In order to have a rooftop farm like this, you need a pretty strong roof. The most important thing is to talk to an engineer and make sure that your roof can support the load. And then once you know how much weight your roof can hold, you can design a green roof that fits your building. Maybe it'll have a vegetable garden, maybe it will just have ornamental plants or grasses. A very common green roof system includes sedum, which is a very low maintenance plant. It can survive drought, it can survive heavy rainfall, and it serves a lot of important environmental benefits.
This is a sedum modular tray system green roof. It's challenging to retrofit a green roof. It's much easier to build a building from ground up with the green roof design so that you can make sure the building roof is structurally strong enough to hold the weight of the medium and the plants. The rain falling on the roof will stay on the roof, and then it drains to the drains, and that rainwater is carrying everything that's on the roof and sending it to the stormwater system. The first step for us was to contact the residents, meet with them, and explain what we're trying to do and why this would be a good project for them. Cooling costs might go down. Apartments that are below the green roof should see electricity bills go down because of green roof's cooling effects on building temperatures. We also talked about having the green roof being good for creating native habitats. Even with a sedum, we might have some beneficial insects that come and maybe reduce the number of mosquitoes that are around. Once we had everything in order and ready to install, the installation itself only took 2 weeks.
As a homeowner, there are a lot of things that you can do. First and foremost, one of the biggest problems we have with stormwater pollution is fertilizers. And we have to try to reduce the amount that we add to the surface, or if we are going to fertilize, make sure that we're utilizing a slower release fertilizer that doesn't run off or decay so quickly. The other thing that we can do is to try to manage our yards a little bit better so that we don't have that water leaving the yard. We can put in rain barrels, we can put in rain gardens, other kinds of green infrastructure around our homes to try to do a good job reducing that. Rain barrels are really great ways to store water on your own property. In a very basic rainstorm, you can have a rain barrel right next to your downspout from your house, and that rain barrel will fill in just a very short amount of time, giving you lots of great rainwater that you can use for watering your gardens, watering your plants.
If you can just follow what nature does by itself, you can do a lot of good. So for example, if you have water that's running out of your driveway in your home or off your lawn and you create a small rain garden, just a small area to funnel that drainage and grow plants or flowers or whatever you'd like in there, that's a natural green infrastructure project you can do at home. If you take some of the turf out of your lawn and you turn that into a managed bed, a flower bed or a garden or something like that, that much less opportunity for nutrients or fertilizers or pesticides or herbicides that may be used on a managed lawn to find their way into surface waters or into groundwater.
Take a trip to the car wash. That can be fun. And it can prevent those detergents and the oil and grease from the car from going down into the storm drain and reaching the bay and the beach.
Everyone likes a green lawn, but it's very important to apply fertilizers according to the manufacturer's recommendations. Over-applying a fertilizer is not going to make your lawn any greener. What it's going to do is going to allow excess fertilizers to run off of your property, get into the drainage system, into the waterways, and then into the surrounding surface water bodies, and no one benefits from that.
If you go to the candy store and you buy a piece of candy, make sure that you get rid of that wrapper in a waste can. Don't throw it into the street. If you're a student in school, take your water bottle with you, your refillable water bottle, and keep going to the water fountain to fill it up. Don't use plastic water bottles. When you go to the grocery store, make sure your parents have reusable grocery bags in the trunk of the car so that you don't have to take the plastic bag every time.
Hang on to your balloons Please don't let them go out in the air, up in the air. I know they think it might go someplace magical, but it doesn't. We found balloons 100 miles out to the ocean. They do kill a lot of dolphins and whales and turtles, so please hang on to them.
Maybe you see an empty tree pit on your street. Call the city or call your town hall and get a tree planted in there. Those little actions can make a huge difference if all of us chipped in. Never pour anything into the storm drain. If you know something about how to manage stormwater and how we can clean the waterways, share that knowledge with everybody and anybody you know.
It starts with us.
You know, stormwater is an express lane for pollutants.
It rolls past our homes and carries all kinds of garbage with it.
From Buffalo to Montauk, stormwater runoff is not an urban or rural issue, but a concern for all communities throughout New York State. Pollutants transported by stormwater runoff translate into major environmental and economic losses to the whole region. Consider what you can do to reduce the impacts of stormwater runoff in your community.
We work to protect, preserve, restore, and enhance natural resources.
Through education and technical assistance.
It is everyone's responsibility to help preserve our natural resources.
For future generations.
Nassau County Soil and Water Conservation District is one of 58 county districts in New York State.
It provides on-the-ground assistance for soil and water resources,
Preservation of wildlife.
And promote the health,
Safety.
And welfare of residents in their respective communities.
At home, at work, at school, and at play.
Make it a habit to think twice about where your waste ends up.
Pathogens and pollutants, such as petrochemicals, heavy metals, and excess nitrogen.
or directly discharged into streams, bays, and oceans.
Consider what you can do to help the Nassau Soil and Water Conservation District.
Protect,
preserve,
Restore,
and enhance our natural resources.
To support clean water and healthy soils, visit nassawswcd.org.
We work together for healthy soils and clean water.